Commercial risks are especially complex, so commercial package policies are designed to allow businesses to obtain coverages for their specific types of risk. One important concept you need to understand first is that any commercial coverage can be written by itself as a monoline policy, meaning it's a single coverage in a single contract, or two or more coverages may be combined into a package policy under a single contract. So again, more than one coverage in one package policy. A commercial package policy, or CPP, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a package policy that contains both property and liability coverages and a number of different types of coverages that a commercial enterprise may need. We will look at each one of these coverages and see how they fit within a CPP and see how that policy may be personalized to the insured's needs. There are 7 coverage parts that are available that can be packaged into one policy: general liability, commercial property, inland marine, commercial auto, equipment breakdown, crime, and farm. All could be part of a commercial package policy, but they don't all have to be. Each business will decide which of these coverages are needed and will only add those. Not all businesses will need farm coverage or inland marine, for example. If a business needs more than one type of coverage, as most do, having a package policy has its advantages. Package policy rates are generally better than if a business were to buy several individual coverages. There will be fewer gaps in coverage and no duplication of coverage. And it's just overall more convenient for the business to have all of the coverages in one policy. The policy itself will include several components that apply to all coverage parts. Common policy declarations will list the first named insured, the policy period, and the policy premiums for each coverage available. Common policy conditions will explain how a policy may be canceled or changed and what the insurer and the insured must do to meet the policy terms. Interline endorsements are endorsements that apply to more than one coverage part to eliminate redundancy and minimize the number of endorsements in the total package policy. Then each coverage part that's included in the package policy will have its own components, specific to that coverage part only. Each coverage part will have its own declarations page, coverages, conditions, and endorsements. Endorsements. There are several different commercial property coverage forms available to commercial property owners. Once they know what property they need to insure, the agent can help select the right coverage forms. But most all commercial package policies will include the building and personal property coverage form, since most businesses will own some kind of property. The available coverages are building, business personal property, and personal property of others. Depending on the nature of their business, a business owner may select 1, 2, or all 3 of these coverages. Then the business owner can also decide what perils they want their property to be insured against. But most all commercial package policies will include the building and personal property coverage form, since most businesses will own some kind of property. The available coverages are building, business personal property, and personal property of others. Depending on the nature of the business, a business owner may select 1, 2, or all 3 of these coverages. Then the business owner can also decide what perils they want their property to be insured against and choose between one of 3 causes of loss coverage forms: basic, broad, or special. The broad form will cover more perils than the basic form, and the special form will cover all perils not specifically excluded. But of course, more coverage means it will be more expensive. So again, the business owner has options based on their needs and ability to pay the premium. So let's take a closer look at what's covered by the building and personal property coverage form. Building coverage ensures the building itself described in the declarations, outdoor fixtures and furniture, items used to service the property, such as lawnmowers, appliances, or fire extinguishing equipment, permanently installed machinery and equipment, and additions under construction, including the materials, supplies, and equipment within 100 feet of the premises. Now, business personal property is for movable property owned by the business located in the building or within 100 feet of it. So that would be furniture and fixtures, machinery and equipment, stock or inventory, and other personal property used in the business. Make sure you understand that this coverage is for property owned by the business itself and not personal property of individual employees. There is a personal effects coverage for that. Finally, personal property of others is coverage for property that the insured is responsible for that is in the insured's care, custody, or control. This will be an important coverage for businesses like dry cleaners or electronics repair shops. Coverage is provided for property that is at the premises or out in the open or in a vehicle within 100 feet. There is an extensive list of exclusions that apply to the building and personal property coverage form. Make sure you study those in your course. Coverage extensions in property policies are in addition to stated policy limits and are only available if the policy has an 80% or more co-insurance percentage. The first coverage extension is newly acquired or constructed property. So that means within 30 days of acquiring a new building or personal property, they will be covered. Newly acquired buildings up to $250,000 and personal property up to $100,000. The insured will have to pay for this coverage from day one. Next is personal effects and property of others. This coverage will pay for losses to personal belongings of the insured or their employees, as well as personal property of somebody else, maybe a client's property if they occasionally stop by the business and there is a potential for loss. Note that there is no coverage for theft of personal effects. However, property of others is covered for all perils, including theft. Then, there is a small amount of coverage available for valuable papers and records, which would apply to the cost of research, replacement, or restoring of lost information from valuable papers or records. Property off-premises coverage extension is for business property away from the premises, property at a storage facility, for example. This coverage will not apply to property in a vehicle, in the custody of a salesperson, or at a fair or exhibition. Outdoor property is next, and it pays up to $1,000 for fences, antennas, and $250 per tree, shrub, or plant, as long as they are damaged by named perils. Another coverage extension is for non-owned detached trailers. The insured may extend the insurance that applies to business personal property to apply to a loss or damage to trailers that the insured does not own, as long as the trailer is used in their business, is in the insured's care, custody, or control, and if the insured has a contractual responsibility to pay for loss or damage to the trailer. The most by named perils. Another coverage extension is for non-owned detached trailers. The insured may extend the insurance that applies to business personal property to apply to a loss or damage to trailers that the insured does not own, as long as the trailer is used in their business, is in the insured's care, custody, or control, and if the insured has a contractual responsibility to pay for loss or damage to the trailer. The most this coverage extension will pay is $5,000. Note that each of these coverage extensions is additional insurance unless otherwise indicated. Optional coverages in the building and personal property coverage form must be shown in the declarations and apply separately to each item. Let's review the 4 optional coverages that are available. Agreed value refers to the value of the property as determined and agreed upon by the insurer and the insured. A good example of that would be insuring a painting that has a stated value that both the insurer and the insured agree upon, and that's the amount the painting will be insured for. If a loss occurs, the insurer will pay no more than the proportion of the insurance limit for this coverage bears to the agreed value. Co-insurance does not apply to the property with an agreed value. Next is inflation guard, which automatically increases the limits of insurance every year to keep pace with inflation. The limits increase by the annual percentage shown in the declarations, prorated over the policy term. Replacement cost optional coverage replaces the actual cash value in the valuation loss condition of the building and personal property coverage form. Remember that replacement cost has no deduction for depreciation, so it puts the insured in a better position than the actual cash value valuation, even though the insured has to pay a higher premium for it. This coverage does not apply to personal property of others, contents of a residence, works of art, antiques or rare articles, or stock, meaning merchandise held in storage or for sale, unless shown in the declarations. One more optional coverage is extension of replacement cost to personal property of others, which can be purchased if the insured already has the replacement cost coverage. If there is a written contract that outlines the insured's liability for loss or damage to third-party property or property of others, the policy will pay either the replacement cost of the property or the applicable limit of insurance, whichever is less. Builder's risk policies are designed to cover a building while it is being built, so it ensures buildings under construction. The coverage is similar to building and personal property coverage form and is written on a completed value form or a reporting form basis. The builder's risk policy takes into consideration the increasing value of a building as it's being built and adds coverage at different intervals accordingly. So as a building grows and gets more elements added to it, the roof, windows, fixtures, it's becoming more valuable. So the amount of coverage increases as well to adequately protect the building at every stage of construction. Property covered under builder's risk is building or structure described in the declarations, temporary structures, foundations, fixtures, machinery, equipment, materials, and supplies within 100 feet of the premises if intended to become a permanent part of the building. Property not covered includes land or water, outdoor lawns, trees, shrubs or plants, radio and television antennas, or detached signs. The builder's risk form includes 4 additional coverages. These are coverages that the insured does not have to pay for. They are automatically provided in the builder's risk policy. Debris removal will pay for removing debris of covered property and other debris on the described premises. This coverage applies if expenses are reported to the insured within 180 days of the loss or damage. It will pay up to 25% of the sum of the deductible plus the amount paid for direct physical loss. If the direct loss and debris removal expense exceed the limit of insurance, the policy will pay an additional sum for debris removal on top of the amount of insurance. This coverage is not, however, considered additional insurance. It's part of the policy. Preservation of property additional coverage is used to pay for loss or damage to covered property that is being moved to a temporary location to protect it from loss or damage. This coverage applies if the loss or damage occurs within 30 days after the property is removed. Again, it is not an additional amount of insurance. It's automatically included in the policy. Fire department service charge coverage applies when the fire department is called to save or protect covered property from a covered peril. This coverage will pay up to $1,000 for service at each premises. Note, the that's the maximum amount the policy will pay regardless of the number of responding fire departments or units and regardless of the number or type of services performed. This is considered an additional amount of insurance because no other coverages or extensions in the policy will cover this type of loss. There is no deductible for the fire department's service charge coverage. Finally, there is the pollutant cleanup and removal coverage, which pays up to $10,000 for expenses to extract pollutants from land or water that the insured may have caused in the course of their business. These expenses will only be paid for if reported to the insurer in writing within 180 days of the date on which the covered cause of loss occurs. This coverage is also considered an additional amount of insurance. Only be paid for if reported to the insurer in writing within 180 days of the date on which the covered cause of loss occurs. This coverage is also considered an additional amount of insurance. You are already familiar with basic, broad, and special coverage forms in personal lines policies such as dwelling or homeowners. Commercial property coverage could also be written as basic, broad, or special, where each form covers a wider range of perils than the previous form. There are also similarities in terms of the types of perils that are included in each coverage form and whether the forms are written on a named peril or open peril basis. Just like in personal lines, basic and broad commercial property coverage forms are named peril policies, meaning the perils must be specifically named in the policy to be covered. The special form is written on an open peril basis, which means it covers all of the perils that are not specifically excluded. The commercial property basic form covers 11 causes of loss. Let's review them. Fire, lightning, explosion, windstorm or hail, smoke, aircraft or vehicles, riot or civil commotion, vandalism, sprinkler leakage, sinkhole collapse, and volcanic action. The broad form includes the same 11 perils as the basic form, plus 3 additional perils: falling objects, weight of snow, ice, or sleet, and water damage. Now with the special form, all perils are covered except those that are specifically excluded. That's why this form is called open peril or all risk, and it focuses on exclusions rather than coverages. All 3 commercial property forms, basic, broad, and special, have the following exclusions: ordinance or law, earth movement, governmental action, nuclear hazard, utility services, war and military action, water damage, including sewer backup, and fungus, wet rot, dry rot, and bacteria. In addition to these exclusions, the broad and special forms have special exclusions that further limit coverage. As you can imagine, from a cost to the insured standpoint, the basic form is the cheapest, and the special form is the most expensive, but the special form gives the insured the best coverage. Inland marine coverage can be written on almost any type of property that is portable and in transit over land or in air. In addition, inland marine insurance covers transportation and communication structures such as bridges, tunnels, or pipelines, and radio and TV towers. Inland marine policies are called floaters. So imagine that the Inland marine coverage can be written on almost any type of property that is portable and in transit over land or in air. In addition, inland marine insurance covers transportation and communication structures such as bridges, tunnels, or pipelines, and radio and TV towers. Inland marine policies are called floaters. So imagine that the coverage floats with the insured property anywhere in the world. Commercial inland marine coverage can be written as a standalone or monoline policy, or as part of a commercial package policy. Another feature of commercial inland marine policies is that they can be filed or unfiled. A filed form requires an insurer to file for rate and form approval with the state insurance department. Filed forms include a $250 deductible that applies to any one loss and are usually written as all risk or open peril coverage. The filed forms are for common approval or as part of a commercial package policy. Another feature of commercial inland marine policies is that they can be filed or unfiled. A filed form requires an insurer to file for rate and form approval with the state insurance department. Filed forms include a $250 deductible that applies to any one loss and are usually written as all risk or open peril coverage. The filed forms are for commonly written risks. For example, fine arts, jewelry, valuable papers and records, and musical instruments. An unfiled or non-filed form does not need to be filed for approval. It is important to understand that non-filed does not mean non-regulated. Policy forms still have to meet each state's standards, and pricing for coverage must be adequate without being excessive or discriminatory. The majority of inland marine policies are unfiled, and they cover unique and unusual risks. Examples of unfiled forms include bridges and tunnels, motor truck cargo, contractors' equipment, Bailey's customer, and equipment dealers. For your exam, make sure to review all of the commercial inland marine floaters presented in your course. There is a special type of commercial property policy designed to protect businesses that rely on equipment and machinery to function properly. Businesses can lose thousands and thousands of dollars if their equipment breaks down and they are unable to manufacture their products or provide services to generate revenue. This is why businesses may need to buy equipment breakdown insurance, which used to be called boiler and machinery. The equipment breakdown coverage is essentially a one-peril form: loss or damage to covered equipment or machinery, anything that can break down mechanically or electrically. Examples of property covered by this policy include boilers, refrigeration units, manufacturing equipment, food processing equipment, HVAC systems, and even computers and phones. The property is insured on a replacement cost basis because usually the type of equipment that needs to be replaced or repaired is very expensive. The replacement cost will allow the insured to replace or repair that equipment as quickly as possible. However, if damaged property is not repaired or replaced within 24 months after the accident, settlement is at the smaller of the actual cash value or the cost to repair or replace. The coverage will pay for direct damage to covered property. In addition, it will pay for things like spoilage, so damage to raw materials or finished products. Utility interruption if it's the direct result of a breakdown. So for example, the equipment that broke down was used to supply electricity, heat, or water, or communication services. It will also pay for brands and labels if branded or labeled merchandise is damaged by a breakdown. The insurer will In addition, it will pay for things like spoilage, so damage to raw materials or finished products. Utility interruption if it's the direct result of a breakdown. So for example, the equipment that broke down was used to supply electricity, heat, or water, or communication services. It will also pay for brands and labels if branded or labeled merchandise is damaged by a breakdown. The insurer will take the property at an agreed or appraised value. The policy will also pay up to $25,000 for expediting expenses for temporary repairs or expediting permanent repairs